Technical Readout 3050 was a huge step forward for the Battletech franchise and universe. It was the first technical readout to include clan battlemechs, and provided technological refits and updated lore for many battlemechs of the original, loved Technical Readout 3025. In this wave of new machines, several made their first appearances, and became fan favorites. Unfortunately, there are a handful which never quite achieved this, and though they are impressive in battle, never quite got the recognition they deserved. The mech which is covered in this video, in fact, is even in-universe a knockoff of a more successful, recognizable design, despite the clear upgrades and polish that it has applied to it. Without further delay, let us begin to discuss Johnston Industries' poor seller, the Caesar. A heavy mech weighing in at 70 tons, the Caesar's origins are not without twists and turns, despite its obvious outward inspiration. First walking off the assembly line in 3049, its true origin starts, in fact, with the Fourth Succession War, the greatest triumph of House Davion, and, to a lesser extent, House Steiner, in the history from the First to the Fourth Succession War, was the victory over the Capellan Accord members in the Fourth War. It was a total victory which reinforced the two houses, saw their enemies vanquished, and established the Federated Commonwealth, the unified house, as the greatest military power of the Inner Sphere. But no one part of this victory was as great as the total victory over the Capellan Confederation, which saw enormous losses of territory, but more importantly, saw the loss of several important manufacturing worlds, including the industrial hub of Tikhonov. Tikhonov had been the home of the production of one of the most noteworthy battlemechs in the history of the Confederation, which was the Cataphract. This machine was built to be the Capellan's answer to myriad problems, and this 70-ton beast, despite being on the losing side of the conflict, had displayed an immense amount of potential and capability during the war. Naturally, capturing the home of its manufacturing resulted in the Federated Commonwealth being able to exploit these battlemechs for their own gain, taking what technology they could from the design to apply to their own future models, but also producing the battlemech for themselves throughout their ownership of the world and beyond. The Cataphract, in fact, would prove to be so successful that Johnston Industries, one of the major battlemech manufacturers in the Davion half of the Federated Commonwealth, opted to build their own revised and streamlined model, leaning into what they felt the Cataphract did well as utilizing the latest technologies of their day. The Caesar, or Kaiser, was to smash through the remaining forces of House Liao and the rest of its allies in a new war, one which would be in the not-too-distant horizon. As an interesting aside, the Caesar was also used as a front during its development to mask production and development of a much more famous mech, the Axeman, which was co-produced by Johnston as well. The war that arrived on the Federated Commonwealth's doorstep, however, was not the Fifth Succession War, but was the Clan Invasion. And unlike many of its peer designs, the Caesar was in fact one of the best battlemechs suited to fight this new kind of warfare. The Caesar's advanced design, though not perfect, was one of the only new designs to appear in 3050 on the Inner Sphere side, and as of the original technical readout, was the only heavy mech outfitted with the famous, and equally infamous, Gauss rifle. This alone made it a contender for a top spot among 3050 designs. Unfortunately, despite its apparent power, the design, both in-universe and without, was never really adopted wholeheartedly. Pilots gave it a solid rating. Its performance against the Clan Menace was acceptable, or better. It was by every means and metric a great battlemech. Unfortunately, even domestically, it appeared that the repurposed Cataphracts proved to be more popular in many respects than its replacement, the Caesar. The Cataphract itself would go on to have a storied history well beyond its introduction in the Forced Succession War and Clan Invasion. The Caesar, on the other hand, is merely noted, often perhaps unfairly, as being a Fedcom knockoff of the Cataphract. While this isn't false, it diminishes the design, and relegates it to a half-forgotten status. The truth is, this was likely the best heavy mech of the new era of warfare in 3050, and suffered from being inserted during an era that only briefly had the original Unseen designs, and right before Technical Readout 3055 appeared with a full catalog of new battlemechs. All the same, should one come across a Caesar, they will quickly find themselves in battle with a competently designed, ruthless battlemech that can deliver hammer blows at a distance, and can more than competently defend itself in close ranges as well. The first variant of this 70-ton brutalizer was the CES-3R. This war machine, even though it pushed the letter in technology, did not do so for most of its construction material regarding its chassis and electronic systems. It uses a standard gyro, internal structure, and cockpit. Its onboard electronic systems as well, namely its Johnston wideband communication system, as well as its targeting and tracking computer, which is the Randpower Pinpoint HY, gives it no additional quirks as a design. It does possess the hyper-extending actuators quirk though, that when using the advanced rules, means it can flip its arms backwards to fire at enemy targets despite having lower arm actuators. Being a new design from the 3040s, especially one pushing new technologies, it is no surprise that the Caesar is powered by a cutting-edge extra-light engine. The GM 280XL Fusion engine allows for the Caesar to move up to 64 km per hour, or 6 movement points in the tabletop game, meaning it can move at the same rate as strategic operations for inner sphere mech forces. This is important for keeping up with battle line formations, and for being able to reliably appear when needed. The drawback is that if the Caesar loses one of its side torsos, it is immediately knocked out due to this advanced engine, unfortunately. Overall, these drawbacks are real, but do not prevent the Caesar from being a very capable design. Double heatsink technology was still quite new to the inner sphere when the Caesar was first constructed. This was a revolution to the mechs that utilized it, allowing them to fire more shots or to operate weapons which produce significantly more heat. The Caesar installs 6 additional tons of these devices, giving it a total of 16 double heatsinks. This means that the CES-3R can reduce its heat total by 32 every turn, which is extremely effective given its dangerous weapons loadout. The greatest single element that the Caesar brings to the field is its ability to hit at range. Fighting clans can feel much closer to an even battle, even if this is not the case when wielding the CES-3R. To start with, its primary striking weapon is a devastating Poland main Model A Gauss cannon, mounted in the right torso. This is a weapon which will punch holes in mechs and potentially even score deadly one-shot KO hits on enemy targets should it hit the head. Backing this up, it mounts a respectable Johnston high-speed, long-range particle projection cannon, or in game terms, an ERPPC. This weapon is outfitted in the right arm and can deliver reasonable damage at all ranges. Finally, the last piece of this is its Sutel precision line medium pulse lasers. 2 are mounted backwards from the side torsos, and 1 is mounted in each arm. These are exceptional in close, given that they can provide accurate and reasonable damage. The Caesar is so well synced it can fire every single weapon system on board, and run without overheating, meaning it can engage opponents to its rear and alpha strike to its front arc without an issue. For a heavy mech, the Caesar in 3050 and beyond offers more than a challenge to any adversary who believes that it can overcome it so easily. Where the Caesar does lack, even if slightly, is in the realm of armored protection for this era. It mounts 10.5 tons of standard plating to keep itself protected, which during the Succession Wars would be more than adequate for its total weight. But 168 points of armor begins to look thin when taking into account its vulnerable XL engine, or the results of a dangerous Gauss explosion should the gun be hit in the right torso. The rifle is surrounded by a case, but this won't stop the mech from ceasing to operate due to the loss of a torso when the Gauss rifle explodes. So, in essence, the Caesar's defense, while not irrelevant, is most definitely the category that it is least capable in for the design. What more can be said about the CES-3R? All of its features culminate in a superb battlemech. Deadly at long range, and with new weaponry on board, the Caesar was an impressive weapon in the arsenal of the Federated Commonwealth, and was arguably the most capable battlemech in the Inner Sphere when tackling their clan adversaries due to it being one of the only heavies available with a Gauss rifle. Its only drawback was its mediocre armor, that combined with its XL engine does mean that it can be disabled and destroyed quickly if mishandled, but it is still tough enough that this would require a dedicated effort on the part of enemy forces to achieve it. If supported well and handled appropriately, this can be avoided, all while the Caesar delivers deadly strikes with its PPC and Gauss rifle every single turn. Overall, it's a great design for its time, and still holds up reasonably in eras that it would pass it by. It's a shame it never saw more use, or more appreciation, as it truly does live up to the name, Caesar. The Caesar's poor sales did mean that Johnston Industries didn't create an overabundance of variants. Unfortunately, there are only a total of 5 variants, including the original design, that were officially manufactured. I will be covering 2 of those variants here in this video. After the breakup of the Federated Commonwealth, there was an export of Caesars to House Steiner, in its briefly composed Lyran Alliance state. The mech was even made more popular in the state after the assassination of Caesar Steiner, though this popularity didn't seem to hold much beyond the Blakest era of Battletech. The best features behind the 3S are dramatically increasing the Caesar's durability with new technologies for the era. Its XL engine is taken out for a less vulnerable light fusion engine, and it installs an endo-steel internal structure to try to claw back some of the lost weight from the engine change. Its heatsink total is reduced to 12 from 16, and it removes its rear-facing weaponry, but this is done partially to increase its protection to 13 tons of light ferrofibrous, making it dramatically more protected than its ancestor. A Guardian ECM adds further protection as well. For armaments, the 3S largely keeps the original payload, minus its original rear-facing weaponry. It adds an ER small laser to the center torso's rear fire, and replaces the ER PPC with a devastating heavy PPC, landing hammer blows, which are at parity with a clan ER PPC for damage. This also means both of its primary weapons hit for 15 damage at range, making its head clipping abilities double. Overall, this design is extremely strong, and is a superior upgrade over the original, and in very obvious ways. The Caesar would be given a new chance at relevance in the Dark Age era, though this has some contradictory information regarding it. Originally mentioned in Technical Readout 3150 as not being in production, as of Recognition Guide 26, this mech appears to be produced in limited numbers by 3148. Utilizing the newest defense technologies, only available in the new era, the CES-5D has improved protection in the form of hardened armor. Hardened armor reduces the mech's speed which it is installed on, but offers it twice the protection per point of armor, and it offers less armor per ton, but allows for a higher level of tonnage for armor plating. The unit also reduces its base heat sinking capacity to minimum levels, and removes its battery of pulse lasers, all in an attempt to heap as much tonnage as it can into its new armored plating. In terms of weaponry overall, it maintains its Gauss rifle, installs a snub-nosed PPC, and has 2 forward-facing ER medium lasers and 2 rear-facing ER medium lasers. It is not as offensively impressive as many of the prior iterations, but it is not trying to be. The 5D is a major pivot in terms of design, being slower, but much more protected than before. The question becomes if these trade-offs are worth it, and only time will tell. The Caesar, despite its relatively underused nature, is a real war winner, especially in the era of the Federated Commonwealth. This 70-ton nightmare would be enough to make almost any inner sphere mech think twice about engaging a unit with it in it, and certainly could give their Jade Falcon adversaries trouble when engaging them on the battlefield. Many mechs took inspiration in various forms, and that does not make them lesser for doing so. The Marauder inspired multiple mechs, including the Marauder 2C, Nightstar, and Marauder 2. The Warhammer inspired the Thug and Warhammer 2C. And there are a multitude of other examples as well. The Cataphract was the basis for the Caesar. The Caesar took what was there and applied new technology and refined the design beyond being a weapon of desperation from the Capellan Confederation. The fact that the original managed to outcompete and outshine the Caesar isn't in and of itself a damning indictment of the Caesar. It just reflects the reality of warfare and procurement. The Caesar is a great war machine for the era of its introduction. It has limited but solid variants, and has a solid variant available in the Il Clan era, and we will be able to see more of how that influences the battlefield soon. One can only hope that this is the beginning of a restoration for this design. Ave Kaiser! Thank you for joining me here today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. I do updates very frequently and you'll be happy with the content, I think. Also, a huge thank you to all the YouTube members for this channel. When you hit the join button and become a member, you take the extra step in supporting the content on this channel, and I can't thank you enough. Because this content really is only possible because of viewers like you. And with that, I will see all of you in the comment section below.